What's going on? Back again. Right now I'll be sharing with you guys 21 nutritional tips on how to cut weight in 2021. Now ideally you should be using the same approach in 2021 as 2020, 2019, so on and so forth. There's no difference, just the calendar is put in a fresh year, and some people feel like this is a great opportunity for them to cut weight. And once again, if you're happy with the weight you're at, you don't have to follow any of these tips. This is for people who actually want to cut weight and maybe they like the way they feel and look, but they feel like they could just be a better version of themselves at a lighter weight. And as far as I'm concerned, I started off at an extremely light weight and I bulked up for a couple years to a very heavy weight, or at least heavy for me. I was around 230, and now I'm a nice little happy medium, leaning more towards the heavier side. So I'm around 210, and that's just the background that I'm personally coming from. So I'm not claiming to be this shredded guru. I've played around with different weight classes, and I'm now at a weight class where I'm very happy and very content, and I could just build on this weight. But you might not be in that situation. You might be in a situation where maybe you're 250 pounds and maybe you want to get down to like a nice 190. This video will help you out a lot, and I'm going to share with you guys a couple different tips, all in a pretty decent order, but take what you want from it, leave what you want, and hopefully this helps you guys out. So let's get into it. So all the tips are going to be time-stamped, and I'm going to go into more of the specifics later on in the video. So first things first, hands down, is to not get too obsessed with the idea of the newest, flashiest, latest diet. Because every day on my social media, in the sponsored ads, I see there's something new under the sun. There's some new diet, somebody reinvented the wheel, but all they did is they took some basic guidelines from a basic diet and they just added a little spin to it. So in this video, I'm not giving you guys any special secrets or hacks or cheats or any of that. I'm just giving you guys some general and some basic things. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of what the diets have in common. And that's what you guys should be doing as well, because a lot of them have a lot of commonalities. For example, calorie deficit, minimally processed foods. Those are two of the main things you'll see as far as the commonalities are concerned in a lot of these diets, along with a couple of other factors. So you could follow a diet, but just understand that you have to put in the work as well. And there's nothing magical that's gonna give you the progress. You have to actually put in the work yourself. I know it sounds very obvious, but that's the first tip. Still general, but still worth mentioning, it's goals and sacrifice. You have a lot of people out there who say, I wanna lose weight. But what does that really mean? To me, it doesn't mean anything, because if you go from 250 pounds and you cut your calories a little bit to 248, now you've lost weight. But does that really mean that you hit your goal? Are you really satisfied and content with that? Probably not, because it's only 2 pounds. But the problem is you only told yourself you wanted to lose weight. You have to be more specific with your approach. So a good example of this is if you're 250 and you tell yourself, look, 2021, I really want to lose 40 pounds. I want to lose 30. I want to go to 220, 210. Let's just say 220. I want to lose a good 30 pounds. And this will make you more accountable. This is more specific. And you tell yourself, okay, I want to lose roughly a pound every week and a half, or a pound a week. Now we have more concrete numbers to work off of, as opposed to just blindly saying that you want to lose weight. And secondly, it's sacrifice. It's hard, for example, if you eat at a fast food restaurant 5 times a week, to have a cutting goal where you also want to lose 40 pounds that year. Something has to give. It's just like the whole time management thing. If you want to be the most productive possible, but you have a social media addiction and you spend maybe 5 hours a day on it and you're just not really that productive, it's hard to reach your goals when you're spending so much time into it. So you have to sacrifice something. Something has to give. You only have 24 hours in the day. And as far as food is concerned, you might have to cut, or you will have to cut some of that fast food out if you want to be in more of a calorie deficit. Now in this video, I'm not going to be talking about conditioning. I'm sticking strictly to nutrition. So we're not going to jump too much into general physical preparedness and all that kind of stuff. It can be done, but generally speaking, you're going to have to cut some of that fast food out of your diet. So the way I see it is a basic process of elimination. You look through your grocery list if you have one. If you don't have one, you'd benefit from having one. And look at it carefully and say, okay, are these foods really serving me in getting where I really want to be? If you're happy with where you are, then congratulations, more power to you. But if you're not, then you want to look at it and say, okay, you know what? Maybe these cereals aren't the best for me. Maybe these snacks I'm eating are too fattening. Maybe I should be having more protein, whatever the case is. And then you just adjust accordingly. Thirdly is slow cooking your cut. What do I mean by this? You don't want to rush a cut Unless if you're extremely obese, you're 400 pounds, then yeah, you could afford to lose a lot more because your health is at more of a risky stake. But if you're, let's say, 200 pounds, you want to lose, let's say 30 pounds, you still want to slow cook it. You don't have to lose 3 pounds per week because you're obviously going to lose a lot of muscle with that as well. So 1 pound per week could be fine. Even for some people, it could be a pound and a half to 2. But understand that when you have these fast weight cuts, you're also going to lose a lot of muscle as well. And you're just going to have that kind of skinny fat look at the end, which won't be too desirable. So you always want to, I'm not going to talk too much about the gym right now, but make it slower. If you're 200 pounds, you want to get to 180. You don't have to be losing 3 pounds a week. 1 pound per week is perfectly fine for most people. And it'll still get you to that end result, but you'll look a lot better and you'll feel a lot better because you're making small and gradual lifestyle adjustments as opposed to rushing into it. Fourthly, you want to find whole, minimally processed foods that suit your psychological profile. So this goes back to my example about the grocery list and the whole process of elimination, taking out certain things that aren't serving you in your life and helping you reach your goal. And you want to replace those things with things that will serve you, things that will help you get closer to your goal. But I'm not advocating that you force feed things that you just absolutely hate. You want to find the nice balance. So for example, you might not be into orange vegetables. You might not be a carrot guy, but you might be into broccoli. So you could stock up on broccoli, stock up on your greens, and you might not be into apples, but you might be into blueberries, strawberries. You might find your fruits in other areas. So there's no universal food that everybody absolutely has to eat. And if anybody does tell you that, then they're full of it because there's such a wide variety, such a big spectrum of foods that you could find so many things that you like and still reach your goal. So the next point is cheat meals. A lot of people are curious, when could I have my cheat meals? I know I'm going to be liking a lot of the stuff in the grocery list, but I want to know when I could have the cheat meals. Is it more on the weekends? Could I have it throughout the week? And there's no universal answer to this, but my approach, and you could do whatever you want with this advice, would be to make your grocery list in a certain way where everything that's on it, at least for the most part, is serving you and helping you reach your goal. You milk that for a couple of months, and then eventually you reach a point where your quote unquote cheat meals are healthy meals. They are things that are still going to be helping you reach your goal. So for example, you may have eaten those big burgers that were from fast food restaurants at your heaviest, but now that you're cutting down weight and you're just cleaning up your nutrition a bit, your quote unquote cheat meal could be something like an organic veggie burger, where technically it still has that burger vibe and the burger feel to it, but it's organic and there's more quality induced into the food. So you can still have the burger effect, but it's just in a cleaner fashion. So number 5 is you don't want to go cold turkey on all the cheat meals just yet. And the reason why is because in the last tip I said you want to eventually reach a point where your quote unquote cheat meals are still healthy for you. But the key word here is eventually. I'm not saying you're going to get there overnight. It might take you a couple months, it might even take you a year, whatever the case is. But if we take an example of somebody who works a 9-to-5 job and on every break of their shift, they go to a fast food restaurant. They do that 5 times per week. It's completely ridiculous to tell somebody like that who you're coaching or just giving them nutritional advice, you're going to go from 5 times a week to this fast food restaurant to absolutely none overnight. It's going to take a bit of time for them to transition into this new phase. So even if the first week they go only 4 times, it's still progress. And then you gradually reduce the time, so eventually they're maybe going once a week. Then you could probably just cut that day out altogether. And then you just follow the gradual process. But once you start rushing into it, it's going to be too much of a shock to the body. At least for most people, they're going to get too stressed out. And that might even be counterintuitive. That might actually make them more stressed out, so they'll eat even more junk food. So you want to always ease into it. You want to slow cook it, like I mentioned. 6 is you want to start counting your calories so you can actually get in a caloric deficit to cut weight. And you also want to have a better understanding of the nutrition labels. So you don't want to just be strolling through the grocery store, taking certain items, just throwing them in your cart left and right without looking at what's actually in the food. How many calories are in this? How much protein is in this? How many fats and carbs are in them? And once you have a better understanding of that, and once you start actually counting your calories, so for example, you could get MyFitnessPal, you could just do it manually on paper, you could write it down. It really doesn't matter. There's tons of different ways to do it, but the fact of the matter is that you have to start understanding how many calories you're getting on average throughout the week. I understand it's not going to be the same every day, but that's why you have to start counting it so you get a better idea. So a good example of this is that when I was around 140 and I was actually trying to gain weight, which is the same idea, I was thinking that I was taking in 4,000 calories a day. I had a whole box of pizza to myself. I thought I was killing it. but that was only maybe once a month or once every 2 weeks. The reality is that I wasn't eating nearly enough to gain even a pound a week. And once I actually started counting the calories, I wasn't getting that 4,000 calories a day I wanted, or that I thought I was getting. I was actually getting 2,100. So I was actually in a deficit. And the same thing applies to certain people. Let's say you weigh 250 and you think that you're getting, let's say, 3,000 calories a day. You think you're in a deficit, but you're probably getting, 5,000 calories to be able to maintain that 250-pound body. So once you get more specific, you start playing around with the variables. Let's say, for example, you start counting right now, and then you're getting, maybe you get 3,000, one day you get 4,000, another day 3,250, 3,750. Then you average it out, and you're sitting at around 3,500 calories per day. Now you have a concrete number you could work off of, and you could start chipping away from there. So you could take that 3,500 calories a day to, let's say, 3,250, see what happens. Or you could even try 500 calories, bring it to 3,000, see what happens. Let's say you roll with the 500 calorie deficit per day, and then you just keep going from there. And then once you plateau, then you can start making certain adjustments, which we'll talk about later. But understand there's 3,500 calories in a pound. So if you go from 3,500 calories a day to 3,000, by the end of the week, you already lost a pound. 8 is you don't want to get on what's called a crash diet. So a lot of people could grasp what I was saying in the last tip about if you're in a caloric deficit long enough, you will lose weight, something has to give. But then they try to start reinventing the wheel. They try to start getting more greedy, and that 500 calorie deficit they were in, they want to bring it down to 1,000, 2,000. And it's a cute theory in general because it's like, okay, I'm in a big caloric deficit, so I will lose a lot of weight. But the problem is that it's not sustainable. And the reason why is because one, your stress levels are going to go through the roof. Your body's used to consuming all this food, and now all of a sudden there's a 2,000 calorie deficit or 1,500. It's a big shock to the body. Also, your appetite is going to go through the roof because once again, it's too much of a dramatic change. Your energy levels are going to go down, which is going to lead to crappier life outside the gym. Is going to lead to crappier workouts. You're going to be building less muscle, and the less muscle you're building, the less it's going to help contribute to your weight loss journey. So you obviously want to maintain as much muscle as possible while you're cutting weight, but if you have crappy sessions in the gym, it's not going to contribute to that. So number 9 is super obvious, but still worth mentioning nonetheless. It's learning how to cook. You have a lot of people who start meal prepping, which is definitely a step in the right direction, but the problem is that the meals that they're making, not only for one day, but throughout their whole week, don't taste good. So you're stuck with these meals for the whole week that you're not enjoying, that you have to try to shove down your throat. And what ends up happening eventually is that these people say, you know what, forget about this meal prep. I'm just gonna start eating out more. I'm gonna start going more fast food restaurants. I don't wanna have all the headaches. I'm just gonna give somebody the money and that's it. But the problem with that method is that you're gonna go right back to where you started, when the intelligent solution is to learn how to cook. You could hire a chef, you could go online, watch some YouTube videos. You could even watch the Bulking on a Budget series, which is very healthy food overall, but you could just adjust it accordingly to your calories. So just because it's bulking on a budget doesn't mean you're dirty bulking. It's actually clean bulking, but with some high quality foods. And you just adjust that accordingly with the amount of calories you should be eating. You can get some really good ideas. That's a whole playlist on my channel where I go into the greater details of how to cook the meals, and you can actually see how I'm doing it step by step, so you might actually like that. So speaking of meal preps, this is actually something that's gonna make or break your progress in the gym and your whole body transformation overall, because you have a lot of people saying, I'm running a body part split, I'm doing back day today, I'm doing leg day today. You have people doing their full body splits, and I just made a video talking about the different splits. But you also wanna have a day for your meal prep, or if you don't have it on one day, you wanna at least have it scattered throughout the week. You wanna have a system where you don't have all the headaches, you just have your food throughout the week. It's very organized in the Tupperwares, in the fridge, some of it's in the freezer, and you just have less headaches because this will make your week a lot less stressful, and you want less mental waste to go into it. So you don't want to be opening your fridge thinking, man, I don't have anything for the week. Now I'm probably gonna have to resort to buying fast food because I'm gonna be late for work. You want to have it all structured. You could have it in cabinets, Tupperwares, whatever the case is. Find a way to just have your snacks and your meals, everything just well prepared for the week, so you don't have to think about it as much. This is more of a psychological tip, but you want to try to find ways to separate hunger and stress as much as possible, because oftentimes they can be correlated, and these might actually be some of the reasons why you gain all the weight in the first place. So a good example of this is when certain people have stress placed upon the body, they'll resort to different ways to cope with the stress. Some people might reach for some cigarettes, others might reach for some alcohol, but you also have a lot of what's called emotional eaters, where they don't know what to do with all the stress, but they cope with it by maybe eating a box of cookies, or maybe eating some cake, or drinking some sodas, or anything that has maybe a lot of sugar to it. It's going to give them a bit of a rush, and they might feel good very short term, but they're going to feel a lot worse when they understand that they're nowhere near their goals as they could be if they found other ways and other alternatives. So you want to try to find ways to make your stress kind of work for you, if that makes any sense. Like I mentioned in the last couple tips, you want your quote unquote cheat meals to still be good for you. You also want what you're doing about your stress to be good for you as well. So for example, you have certain people who will get very stressed out, and they'll use their stress to maybe go into the gym, maybe do a little bit less volume because maybe they can't tolerate all the volume. So maybe just cutting down the volume a bit will make them feel better. And maybe you have another group of people who find that when they train a little bit more, it has more of a therapeutic aspect to it, and this actually makes them feel better. So you have to kind of experiment with different things, see what works for you, but try your best to not correlate stress and hunger. Because the reality is that the human body could go days without eating. There's people who are doing these intermittent fasting diets where they're not even eating the whole day. So it's not the end of the world if you don't eat for a couple hours. It's not an emergency. But what's happening is that you get stressed out and you don't know how to cope with it, so you end up eating a lot of food. But there's different ways around it. So we just got finished with some of the general guidelines that some of you may already know, but it's also good to have the reminder from time to time. Now we're going to get into more of the specifics. So as cliche as it sounds, a lot of people need to have more protein. And the reason why is because this is one of the most essential macronutrients from a muscle building standpoint, but it's also the macronutrient that fills you up the most. And this is very important because we could use this to our advantage for calorie control. So you actually don't have as many calories throughout the day. So a lot of people, they tend to bulk up on a lot of carbs, for example. But if you have more protein in your program, or if you have more protein, let's say we take your cliche chicken, vegetables, and rice. As opposed to stocking up on cups and cups of rice, you can have a decent amount of rice. You could up the protein a little bit, and the protein will fill you up more with less calories, and then you don't have to have as many carbs. And you finish off with the vegetables. And it's kind of like the idea of getting more out of less weight in the gym. If you do, say, a squat but with a pause rep, you could get more out of less weight and still get a great training response. It's a very similar thing with your nutrition. If you add in a little bit more protein, this will fill you up. So it's just good from a calorie control standpoint. Next, it seems to be this huge misconception that carbs are going to somehow make you fat, when in reality, a caloric surplus is going to make you heavier, which will make you look fatter. But carbs alone are definitely not the devil. In fact, I would actually argue that carbs are essential for helping you cut weight. And the reason why is because these are going to fuel you. These are going to give you more energy to have better workouts, to be able to build more muscle, to have a faster metabolism. And it's just essential in your weight loss journey. So the thing with carbs, you don't want to get too greedy on them either, because obviously you want a certain amount of energy, but you don't want to get too greedy where you're consuming too many carbs. Now you're in a caloric surplus. And the same thing can be said about the protein as well. So it's about having the right amount of calories. You want to be in the sweet spot. So you might have a certain amount of protein per day, like the guideline I said, 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Then for example, maybe the fats, you could have 20 to 25% of your calories could come from fats, and the remaining could be carbs. But keep in mind that all these ratios between carbs, fats, proteins are important. But at the end of the day, if you're in a caloric surplus, you will gain weight. And if you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose. So next thing on the list is appetizers. This is purely observational, but I'm going to try to find something to back up what I'm saying. If you have, let's say, you and your friend who are eating 3 pizzas each, and you're having, let's say, an eating contest. You finish in 5 minutes, they finish in 6. What you might notice is that you don't feel full at all. And the reason why is because your brain didn't have the time to properly register what you just ate because you did it so fast. Now, I'm not recommending that you eat things fast, but what I'm saying is that around the 15-minute mark is when your brain starts processing that you're starting to get full and you're going to start slowing down a little bit. That's why a lot of these food eating competitions, they do it really fast before the 15-minute mark, because they're trying to anticipate what's about to come. So we could actually use this to our advantage by having appetizers in the mix. Let's say you have a salad or you have soup, things that are already low calorie in nature. By the time you're finished it, you're maybe at around the 8-minute mark. And then by the time you start your meal, you're probably around 10 minutes in. That only leaves you around like 5 minutes to eat the meal. And once that 5 minutes is up, you're past the 15-minute mark, and now your brain's gonna start processing that you're getting full. And this is the reason why when you go to certain buffets, you could check out what you want, and then they'll be serving you a lot of water. They're trying to fill you up. Then once the food comes, they're gonna send it quick. You start eating it, and then when it's time to fill out the next batch of food, they're gonna take forever. And the reason why is because they're purposely not wanting you to take all the food in the restaurant. So they're gonna take their sweet time on the second batch. And by the time the second batch comes, you're probably not gonna want that much food anyways. Next is supplements. You have a lot of people thinking that supplements are some magic pill that are somehow gonna replace a crappy diet. So if you have a terrible meal prep, your foods don't taste good throughout the week, but the fact that you have these great supplements is gonna help you. A supplement is only there to supplement good nutrition, but not to replace it. It's just kind of like the ornament on a Christmas tree. It's not the bulk of what should be delivering results. Rather, it's maybe the 2 or 3 extra percent, but a lot of people seem to be more focused on the 3% than the 97% of all the nutrition aspect. So you don't want to get too caught up in supplements. Am I against supplements? Not necessarily. I think they're another tool in the toolbox, but you don't want to be over-reliant or over-dependent on supplements. You want to learn how to cook, like I just mentioned before, and you don't want to be too reliable on them. In other words, supplements are only there to supplement what you could attain with a natural diet. And if a supplement company tells you that they could do a lot more, they're promising more results, then it most likely isn't a supplement company, it probably is something else. So next is sneaking calories into your nutrition without actually being aware of it. If you watch my video, The Ultimate Guide to Gain Weight with Alex, you'll realize that we talk about the opposite. If you want to gain weight, you want to find olive oil to put in your pasta, a little bit of extra butter to put on your toast, so on and so forth. You want to do the complete opposite if you're trying to cut weight. The reason why is because you're trying to find ways to get more out of less calories. So you don't need excess butter on your toast. You don't need extra olive oil, so on and so forth. This is beverages. When you're cutting weight, you don't only want to look at the foods you're eating, but you also want to look at the liquids you're consuming as well, because you might actually be sneaking a lot of extra calories in your nutrition without even knowing about it. A good example of this would be the GOMAD movement. There's a lot of people doing gallon of milk a day. I don't think it's so popular anymore, but people were doing it for a while, which I obviously don't recommend for health purposes on the channel, but it definitely illustrates how much weight somebody could gain if they drink enough milk. And if you're a big milk drinker, just understand that might be playing at a disservice against your goal, because you will be packing on a lot of extra calories within the day without even really noticing it. Just a glass of milk here, a glass of milk there. And you also want to make sure you're consuming enough water as well. You want to make sure you're hydrated. Your urine shouldn't be yellow. It should be more see-through like water. And you want to just tailor and customize your nutrition plan accordingly with the right beverages as well. So I'm not saying you only have to drink water, but make sure it's low in calories as well. As far as snacks are concerned, these are important between meals to give you extra energy. I'm a big fan of nuts, different forms of cashews, but keep in mind that you also want to be careful with those as well, because these could also pack on a lot of extra calories. So I think cashews, avocados, there's certain snacks that are great, but you just have to be careful with the doses and how much you're consuming on a daily basis. And a good example of this would be, instead of having a whole avocado, maybe you could just have 1/3 of it, or maybe just half of it. Instead of having 2 handfuls of cashews, maybe you could have half a handful, or maybe just a handful. This will give you the energy, but you won't have the excess in calories either. So next, let's talk about weight loss plateaus. If you go back to the first example where I was talking about, on average, if someone gets 3,500 calories a day, then they bring it down to 3,250 or even 3,000, they might be able to roll with that for a while, lose a good amount of weight, but eventually that will stall out. And when it does stall out, you have to make certain modifications as far as the total calories are concerned. So in that case, you could bring that 3,000 to 2,750. Once you're there, you could see what happens, roll with that for a week or two. If it's not budging, you could even bring it down to 2,500, and you just keep working with it from there. So now let's talk about meal spacing and your psychological profile. I'm not advocating that this is a one-size-fits-all video. You have to experiment with different things. And a good example of this would be meal spacing. I'm not saying that everybody has to have your traditional breakfast, lunch, dinner with maybe a snack or two in between. Although that might work for many, not everybody wants to work that way. Some people might make 5 meals throughout the day, or 6 smaller meals throughout the day. You could do whatever you want. Find what works for you. Some do intermittent fasting where they have 1 or 2 meals at the end of the day. But what's most important is that at the end of the day, the total calories are in a certain fashion where you're still in the caloric deficit. So lastly, and I'll throw this in just as a little bonus, is that you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody, especially on social media. And the reason why is because, let's say you're misguided and you're following somebody who's enhanced. You have to understand they could get away with so many things you're not able to get away with because they have the enhancement. They have a lot of assistance on their side. Or let's say people who have God-given genetics. They just have such blessed, fast metabolisms, and you don't even have that kind of metabolism, so you can't even get away with half the stuff that they're doing. Just be conscious and be careful of that, because if you compare yourself to everybody, you're going to understand that it's just apples and oranges. So you have to find your psychological profile, see what works for you, go through your own trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't, and that's about it. So these are just some tips I compiled throughout the last couple of days. and I hope you got some value out of it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What are your goals for this year? Are you trying to cut weight? What's your current weight at right now? What's your goal? Share it with us in the comment section below. Let us know, and see you guys next time.